Trib Live Radio presents Off-Road Politics from Main Street to the Beltway with Salena Zito, reporter at the Pittsburgh Trib. Trib Total Media, see what's next. Now, here's your host, Salena Zito.
Hi, welcome back to Off-Road Politics. I'm Salena Zito, reporter and columnist and blogger at the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review. And on the line with me, as always, is someone we're connecting with that is outside the realms of Washington and inside the minds of the voter. It's Ed Morrissey, senior editor and correspondent at Hot Air. Ed, welcome to the show. Welcome back.
Well, thank you. It's great to be back. It's always great talking with you.
Well, it's always wonderful talking to you. I always love joining you on your show as well. If you don't follow Ed Morrissey on Twitter, give him your handle, please, young man.
Oh, it's at Ed Morrissey, Morrissey. So, yeah, absolutely. I have a lot of fun on Twitter.
Double R's, double S's. Yes, you always keep it nice, too. You're rarely a snark machine or mean, but you always have a great way of getting your point across with keeping it clean on your Twitter feed, which is, I really, really like that.
Well, I try.
It's
I try. I don't know if I completely succeed at that, but I try.
You do pretty well. Last year, you famously gave up Twitter for Lent.
That was actually kind of nice, to be honest with you. I actually enjoyed that.
It was a void for me. I missed you.
Thanks. So
Ed has a new book out. Tell everyone how they can order. It's called Going Red, the 2 million voters who will elect the next president and how conservatives can win them. Tell them a little bit about how they can purchase the book.
Well, right now you can pre-order the book.
Yep.
You can go to goingredbook.com, and there's links to all sorts of different retailers, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. There were retailers in there I didn't even know existed. So that's the reason why I'm sending people to the one site, because you might have a favorite retailer that you prefer to buy from. So check it out there. You can also get it. You can get it in hardcover. You can get it in ebook format. And I believe that's going to be. I know it's Kindle and Nook, and I think that it's also going to be iTunes, the iBooks rather. I believe it's also in iBooks format, and also audio. I recorded the audio version myself.
I was just going to ask you that. That's amazing.
Yeah, that was fun. I had a good time with that. We got this great studio here local to us in Minneapolis, and the people there were just terribly nice. And we're actually going to try to get together with them more often socially now, because it's this great couple that owns this studio. So it was a lot of fun. The whole process has been a blast. I've just had a great time from beginning to end.
That's awesome. I finally got to finish the book. Unfortunately, traveling around with the presidential campaigns has interrupted me several times in my course to finish it. It's a great read. You do a really good job of taking people inside the battleground state, not only the states, but the specific counties where Republicans, like the counties to watch to see if Republicans are going to win the races. You talk to people, you talk to leaders in these communities, and you talk about what the problems conservatives face going into this election, what they've faced under the Obama administration, and it's sort of like, how do I describe it? It's like a GPS or a guidebook on how on the pathway to taking back the White House for conservatives.
Yeah, and it was interesting. It's a great process for me because it got me out of the house,
right,
first off, which is always, there's this. I don't know if you know the movie. Oh gosh, now I can't think. Galaxy Quest.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Like the best movie ever.
Great movie. It's a great movie. And there's a scene near the end where Justin Long plays this teenager kind of geek fan of the show, where he has to go run out to try to guide the spaceship into a landing at some parking lot someplace, and he runs in and breathlessly tells his parents about this and grabs things, and he runs back out and the mother turns to the father and says, "Well, at least he's outside."
Yeah, exactly. And
that was kind of like that with this. The process. Well, at least I was outside. At least I was doing something out in the field, and I just really enjoyed that. I had a great time with this.
Well, nothing really gives you the pulse about what's going on more than actually stepping foot in the town or in the cities or in the areas where that matter in election cycles. And even the ones, I'd argue, even the ones that don't matter. But, I mean, this is sort of how, and we've talked about this for years, this is sort of how I started warning about this populist thing. I kept saying, oh my God, it's out here, you guys. It's not going to be pretty, but it's coming.
Right.
So what was it like to go out and talk to people?
First off, it was a lot of, there was a lot of, it was very positive.
Mm-hmm.
I think that people get this idea that if you go out and talk to people who are just angry, they're negative,
Right.
they're certainly not happy.
Right.
And I'd say collectively people are angry.
Right.
But when you talk to people one-on-one, I mean, you really get a good sense of who they are.
Yeah.
And what it is that they really want, and they become very thoughtful.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't talk to anybody on the road here where I met one-on-one or even on a phone conversation that didn't have some good insight and really respect for the idea of what we do in elections. They may not be very happy with the process itself. They may not be very happy with the candidates, but they are all aspirational. And,
Right.
and I think you see that in the book. The people
For
who
sure.
talk to the people, they're all aspirational. They want something better.
Yeah.
And whether or not we're giving it to them is a different question, but that's what they want. And they all have different ideas about what that means and how to get there. But I think when you see these particular swing counties, is what you're seeing is people really want something that works. And they're kind of tired of the ideological battles, as you might expect in swing states where you have a pretty good mix of different kinds of populations. They just really want something that works, that takes them seriously and addresses their concerns and knows who they are. And that's the process that I go through in this book is the process that's been missing, especially with Republicans. But I'd also argue to some extent outside of Barack Obama with Democrats. The difference being is that Barack Obama was very good at that.
Right.
And it's something I knew conceptually before I went out in the field. It's something I learned much more granular, in a much more granular way when I was out talking to people and finding out what they were doing and how they were doing it and what the end purpose of those efforts were. And I think that Barack Obama rewrote American politics maybe rewrote it back to the idea of all politics is local, and if you forget that, you do it at your own peril.
So, and you're right. People, the sort of look at voters in this cycle, we're on both sides. They're very sort of active and engaged, and because of some of the rhetoric coming from Trump, and even sort of, and while Bernie Sanders doesn't share the same rhetoric, he does share the same sort of strong words. His tone of both of these candidates comes across as angry. Voters, I would say, are more frustrated and looking for ideas as opposed to looking for being branded ideologically.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think ideology in the swing states anyway carries a lot less weight than people think it does. And this was the other part. I don't think that when you get right down to it, America is a conservative nation. I don't think it's a liberal nation.
Right.
I think that it's a pragmatic nation. And you can get by with broader ideological arguments in states that don't really have a whole lot of opportunity to move from one party to the other party. And that's true for both parties, right? I mean, California is going to go Democrat. Texas is going to go Republican. New York is going to go Democrat. We know these things. And honestly, all you really need to do is just simply sort of maintain the ideological balance and go there and raise money for the parties. But if you want to compete in states that could go either way, you have to know who those people are. You have to understand what their concerns are, what their specific concerns are. And if you want to talk about politics, you have to bring it down to a level that makes sense in their lives. Because really, people are voting. It's an emotional experience. And what they're saying is, this is the person I think who could do more for me than the other person, or at least do less damage to me than the other person. And in order for voters to feel comfortable with that, they really have to know that you know what their life is like.
Right. So, explain sort of, as you went through this process and as you were writing this book, I don't want to give away the store, but explain some sort of revelations that happened to you along the way that you were like, wow, I never thought about it that way.
I don't know that I had that particular kind of revelation, but I will tell you that there were a couple of things that happened almost immediately going on the road that really defined the direction that the book was going to take. And the first one really was in North Carolina, which was, I believe, my second trip. It was my second time on the road. I did Florida first. Florida was interesting too. Florida was an exercise in getting to understand how to tell the story of a community, and that was a lot of fun. But I went to North Carolina, and almost immediately I got in with the Young Republicans. I connected up with Marquise Young, who's a conservative activist, an African-American conservative activist in North Carolina. But prior to that, I had also gotten in contact. In fact, it was at an AFP event that I ran into Pudgy Miller and just sort of struck up a conversation with him. And Pudgy is just this wonderful, engaging radio talk show host from Wake County, and African-American conservative. And I told him, I said, well, I'm going to be coming out your direction. Is it possible that I can interview you? Not only did he do that, but he connected me up with several people out there that I spoke with about why African-Americans and Republicans don't seem to be able to connect. And it's mostly because Republicans have given up on that demographic. And even though there's conservatives in there, and even though the conservative message might eventually start resonating with a fairly significant number of people in that community, Republicans just don't try. And when they do, they have some success. Pat McCrory, North Carolina governor, I think he got 14% of the African-American vote in his last election, which is pretty decent for a Republican,
right.
And it helped him win his election. And so I got into that. I'd actually had a politician talk to me about that in Florida, so I was already sort of prepared to look at that. But the way Pudgy and his colleagues put it to me, and it really did kind of change the direction. Also, Sonny Johnson, who is a very dynamic activist. She writes at Breitbart, and she lives in Prince William County. She and I had a phone conversation. It was just absolutely phenomenal. Yes, there were these events that took place as I was doing the reporting on this that did tend to redirect some of what I was thinking, especially farther on down the line. And that was part of the reason why I wanted to go out in the field. I mean, it's one thing to write a book about your opinions. It's another thing to actually go out and test those theories,
right.
and have them adjusted. And Salena, I mean, you're a tremendous reporter, and in fact, you appear in Going Red.
I do. Page 199, everybody.
199. Go right to 199. You can skip 1 through 198. Just go to 199 with Salena. And that was part of the value of the book for me. Was it really did reset my thinking about what we can expect in 2016, and what type of, even though the book is very much nominee agnostic. In fact, we don't even really talk about the primary.
Right.
We just talk about, we won't even really talk about candidates. What we're talking about is these communities and how you reach the people in these communities. And that's valuable no matter who the nominee is. But it does tell you what type of campaign you need to run in order to win those communities. And that might have, I mean, there may be some insight in that if we still haven't selected a nominee before you get to the convention. I think that this book speaks to what it is that you're going to need when Republicans go out in the field and try to win back these states that they've won in the past. With the exception of Wisconsin. I should mention, Wisconsin Republicans haven't won since 1984, but it should be in play.
Absolutely.
Based on the politics in that state. And it'll be interesting to see whether or not Republicans can make that work.
The book is Going Red. You can check out everything you needed to want to know about the book. It's at goingredbook.com. What is the release date?
Release date is April 12th,
Okay.
and if you pre-order, of course, you'll get it right on that date.
Awesome. Ed Morrissey, thank you so much for joining me on Off-Road Politics. I really appreciate it. I highly recommend reading the book. I really found it so informative. Ed really sort of boiled down everything and gave such a great guide into how conservatives can and will and need to win back the presidency by going into these incredibly, just like you really just got right down in there, and I love that kind of reporting because that really tells the larger story of what the race is going to be about. Obviously anybody that listens to Off-Road Politics already follows you on Twitter anyways, but it's at Ed Morrissey. He's one of my favorite people on Twitter, one of my favorite people in the world, and the book is a must-read as far as I'm concerned.
Well, thanks, Salena. I really appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to talking about this more and more as the year goes along.
Yay! I really look forward to. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we should be using it all summer as our little GPS for the Republicans to get to the White House.
I would endorse that idea.
Ed, have a very blessed Easter. Thank you so much for joining us.
And you as well, Salena. Thank you.
That's it this week for Off-Road Politics. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone.